How does a traditional film camera work? Anybody? I'm not talking about a digital camera. I'm talking about an actual camera that uses film. Did you know that you can actually make a home film camera if you have film? Film is a special type of paper. It's sensitive to light. Let's talk about light. We know that light has the spectrum, right? Roy G. Biv. Okay. Now what we know is that Roy, or it stands for red. All right. Now red lights are big, massive waves. Okay, and they come big and wave, and they're slow, relatively for light. On the other end, the V is violet. Now violet light is violent, and I remember it that way. It's violent. It's very short and it's very boom, and it moves quick. Now, film is sensitive to these different wavelengths. Okay. In fact, it's if we were to take it and look at it very flat-like. Okay, and you can see that the big waves come down and they're going to make a small indentation on it. Okay, and then the violent waves come and they're going to make a bigger impact. All right, it's kind of like if I took somebody and I punched them really hard in the right arm, right, and I punched them slightly hard in the left arm. They're going to feel both of those effects, but they're going to feel one more than the other, and that's the way that film reacts to the different waves of light. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take that sensitive paper and we're going to put it in a box. Okay, and so what you get is this box right here. You put the paper on one side of it, right, and on the other, and what that box does is it makes it completely void of light. No light can come in, no impacts on that paper. On the opposite end, you're going to put a hole. All right, now what that hole is going to do is let the light in. So the light's going to come from the sun or whatever source of light we have. It's going to hit and reflect off the person's face. It's going to go through that hole, and it's going to go and make those impacts on the paper. Now, it's going to continue to make those impacts, and it's just going to be nothing but a big blob. It's like if I just punched you for an hour over and over into your body, you're just not going to feel each punch individually. So what we have to do is at that hole is we are going to make it so there's a shutter. It closes. So what happens is the light comes down, hits the face, goes in, makes all the punches, and we shut the shutter. Okay. Now what we do is we take that film into what's called a darkroom, which you know if you've been watching Stranger Things is that room with the red light, and the guy's like, hey, don't let any light in here, because what he's doing is applying chemicals to that film, which actually takes away that sensitivity to light and leaves them the photograph. Okay. This is where we get into this word called innovation. Most people don't know what innovation is, but innovation is merely
using an existing idea, method, or technology and repurposing, adapting them to create a new idea, method, or product.
So that what happens is, now this film was used a long time ago, this exact camera, okay? In fact, it's so long ago, the first president to ever be taken a photograph of was Abraham Lincoln. That's how old it is. Okay? Just like all great inventions, it came from a bet. Two gentlemen were having an argument as to whether or not when a horse runs, is there a moment when all four legs come off the ground? One gentleman, of course, is arguing that it looks like there's a moment where all four legs off. And the other gentleman is going, no, there's this thing called gravity. And what happens is with gravity is that if all four legs come off, it would fall. All right. And what they did is they said, you know what? We've got this camera. All right. But we've had some innovations into it. So it started with this box and that film, and there's the bad side was that the film had to be the size of the picture that you wanted. The first innovation to the camera was they added a lens to it. What that lens did is it focused it down, and it could put it into a tiny square like this piece of film. Right? And allow them to take that square, and then they could blow it up and do any size picture they wanted, but they could also stack that film. It didn't take as much film paper that was so expensive. They could stack it up, and they would get what's called a film strip. So these gentlemen took that camera, and they're like, you know what? Let's solve our bet. We have this thing called this invention, this amazing thing called a camera. Let's take this and we're going to set it up around a racetrack. We're going to race the horse and we're going to take a bunch of pictures, which works. In the end, they actually got this. They got a picture of all the different stages of the horse running. And you can see there is a moment when all four hooves are off the ground. Okay? But an interesting byproduct was they actually had every motion of that horse running. Okay? And then when they flipped through that, it looked like they could see the horse running. And it looked like their picture had motion. And they said, you know what? Let's take this idea of this lens camera, all right, on the film strip. What if we put a crank on the side of that? And every time we turn the crank, what's going to happen is the shutter's going to open, light's going to come in, it's going to make all those indentions, all right? And then as the shutter continues, or as the crank keeps turning, the shutter's going to close, and then that film strip's going to move down to the next available the next available film. And so as the crank comes around, and so what we're going to do is we're going to take multiple pictures in a row. And they were able to take all these pictures, boom, 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 boom. And what they did is they took this camera and they set it up on the streets of New York, and they just recorded people walking back and forth. And that's how we got the actual video camera that you have now. Your iPhone works in the same premise. It just uses these light sensors instead of film to actually tell the difference between that ROI and that V of the different light coming in. And it just keeps it all there. And what it does is it's constantly taking pictures. Do you know how many pictures it takes and how many pictures you actually see coming at you when you watch a movie? It's actually 24 pictures per second, also known as 24 frames per second.